Say no. That's carried. Thank you very much. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is streamlining the council's property disposal process, and we have Bruce Rendell here, and I think that we have got an additional.
Well, we're suggesting, we understand that it wasn't clear enough in the report that we would be consulting with community boards as soon as possible, so we just drafted some words that might provide that additional assurance.
Yeah, so my question was whether we're actually approving the new process, or is it a pre-existing process?
It's effectively a pre-existing process. What you're
that
approving,
we've already approved.
What you're approving is the criteria that we will then use to activate that pre-existing process, so that it gives more assurance that elected members are providing the guidance.
That's absolutely fine, because no. Oh, I mean, it doesn't matter whether it says endorse or approve. I mean, it's that was my misreading of the word future use. So and I misunderstood that. So you have now absolutely clarified that. The whole purpose of this is to endorse the criteria that will be used, and we will note within the resolution itself. So we'll have noting that with the intention. Noting that the intention. Noting that the process ensures community board have sufficient time to consider the properties. So that's all. That's which is noted in the process itself. So note that the process ensures that community boards have sufficient time. Yep. So that requires the reference to be made. Well, before I take questions, can I have a mover and seconder for the Sam McDonald, and a seconder, Andrew Turner? Oh, sorry, I've taken Andrew. Sorry, I'm going to come to questions in a minute. So questions are Yanni, Melanie and James.
Thank you.
And Anne.
I get what we're trying to do with this policy, but at the workshop, the concern was raised that if a community board's approach to consider the future use of a site, that there's nowhere within the organisation or within the council group of families that they can go and get the strategic advice over how to develop a proposal. So I'm just wondering how, I think we've just seen before, for example, all the work happening in New Brighton, and there's a number of really cool projects going on there. But is there any thought that we've given to, rather than the board getting a memo saying you need to do X, Y, Z, actually having some ability, resource, either through urban development or Christchurch NZ or whoever's doing that now, to support the board in that proposal or that proof of concept?
I think, so the final decisions will be made by council, and if they believe that there is sufficient justification to do that further exploration, they would then set that resolution to say, council organisation, staff, go away and do this work and provide that information back to us. So that what we're trying to do, though, is avoid the situation where there are decisions made to retain, but there is no funding that goes with it, and we're left with land that we're causing dissatisfaction to citizens and neighbours because we're not maintaining it. So there is certainly going to be those mechanisms that will allow community boards who have good ideas that persuade all of you as councillors that they're worth further exploration to go away and do that exploration.
I'm trying to understand, is there any way they can get that support before council makes the decision? If they ask the question, officers will then look to work on those and provide that advice. Right.
Sorry, I was about to hit the bell by accident. Melanie.
The bit that concerned me was in figure 5, where it has that little thought bubble thing that at the bottom says about the community board may see the draft list before approved by council. So for me, that's a problem. The additional resolution is good, but it says sufficient time, but it's not really defined. So could you speak to that? Because really, I would like it when the properties are being identified right at the beginning, that community boards are given a heads up that if there's a new piece of land to be disposed, that they know about it,
So
instead of just seeing in the LTP.
yeah, we can get that. You're not approving that diagram, and apologies if that's not as clear. Think of it as will, because that's what we're saying. That's what you're saying in your resolution, that we will see the community board will see the draft list before it gets approved by council. Certainly this year, in future years, because we potentially will be earlier, council can approve the draft list and then circulate it. But this year, the community boards will see it before councillors see it.
So when you say sufficient time, what could be the minimum?
If we're looking at putting this through into the annual plan process, potentially we can be heading around a June date. So giving at least 6 months. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Got James and then Anne.
My question has been answered, thanks.
Ooh, good behaviour there. Anne?
Thank you, Bruce and Angus. Just wondering, in terms of the situation we had out at our board with that piece of land,
Yeah.
how will this change that process so that doesn't happen again? So we had a situation where the staff came and they bought proposition for some land to be sold, and the community board said, no, hold on, we want to hold on to it. And it caused a lot of wastage, really, of time and resource to get to a point where I'm still not sure whether we actually have any agreement. How will this process make that better?
So that particular case will continue to be discussed with the community board. There was further new information brought up which we're exploring, and we'll come back to the community board. But in the general case, that was property where we required to buy a whole property, but we only needed part of that property for the works that we needed. Council has already given us the instruction and the guidance that in those circumstances they want to see that extra land sold off as soon as possible, and have given us a delegation to do that so that we can return that money back into the specific project that you put the money on budget for. So in future circumstances, we shouldn't get into this circumstance at all, because you've already given a separate delegation around that in different writing instructions.
Thank you, that's very clear. So this has been moved and seconded. Is there any debate? I'll put the motion. Oh, sorry, James, sorry.
I'll do it. No, that's all right. But I'll just quickly say that I think this is a really good idea. I think streamlining the process makes a lot of sense, and I think the reason is because councils inherently are very good at empire building, and ultimately that leads to rates being higher than they need to be. To give you one example of that, it was far easier for us to buy 100% of the shares back for Littleton Port Company, which was a publicly listed entity, than it was to sell a thin stretch of land that adjoined the Christchurch Art Gallery, which we only owned for access to base isolate the building. So I think streamlining the process makes a lot of sense, and I think at the end of the day, unnecessarily holding on to land which serves no real purpose costs the ratepayer money, and it doesn't need to. And we can put that capital to better use elsewhere, such as reducing rates and paying down debt. So I welcome this and hope everyone else does too.
Thank you. Andrew?
Thank you. I also welcome this. There are some things about the current process that clearly are not working, hence the length of time it has taken to make decisions to divest some land. I was very aware of a resolution that came from the Banks Peninsula Community Board some time ago to divest a piece of land which had been sitting there unused for some time, and the conversation around divestment had been going on for around 10 years. So I don't think this is as much about councillors' unwillingness to divest land as a process which hasn't worked in terms of doing that quickly. A more strategic approach through the long-term plan and annual plans with community board input rather than formal consultation built in, I think is absolutely the way to go, and I look forward to seeing this work so that we can get the benefit of land which has got no value to council whatsoever on the council's balance sheet as quickly as possible, so that we can take that into account through the annual plan and LTP processes.
Well, I feel compelled now to say a few words. Oh, Melanie.
No, I agree with this process. Like the Centennial Hall that our board has been happy to get rid of since I've ever been there. So, and that nothing's progressed with that whole time. So, yeah, but it's really important community boards are involved, yeah, so I think it looks good. And they actually have a chance to properly submit and be fully consulted as well.
Aaron?
Yeah, just quickly agree with the points that James made, and just want to say, like, when it comes to property, this council are like hoarders. We need to just get rid of some of it, and we could be on one of those shows.
Oh, Tim?
Actually, just going on about the hoarders, it's actually, I don't believe it's staff, I actually believe it's the councillors around the table, so just, yeah.
Yeah. Right, well, I was just going to simply say that what we're doing today is endorsing the criteria to be used to identify properties. And the key ones for me is the full property still required for the purpose for which it was originally acquired, which picks up the point that was made about the change we've already implemented about delegating the excess purchase back to the project, so that actually minimises the cost of the project. And does the property have special cultural, heritage or environmental values that can only be protected through public ownership? I think this is a very good thing to do. Oh no. Phil?
Just making sure everyone knows that this is not wholesale sale of our assets. This is just getting rid of a lot of fluffy stuff that Bruce has had to pay rates on forever, and it will make life a lot easier for him. So I think bring it on. It gives us a few bob back in the bucket.
Excellent. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. And now I'm going to adjourn the meeting for morning tea. It is 11:07, 7 minutes later than I had hoped for, but we're doing very well, and I want to acknowledge councillors for that. If we could reconvene at 20 minutes past, that gives us 13 minutes, 20 past.